the inspiration for A Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street is among the most terrifying horror movie villains. Unlike some shambling zombies or a chainsaw-wielding maniac, he cannot be escaped because he lurks in your dreams. With his scorched visage and bladed fingers, Freddy found all kinds of gruesomely ironic ways to dispatch his teen victims. Writer and director Wes Craven named Freddy after a childhood bully, but the inspiration for the story is far scarier. While reading the LA Times, Craven came across a series of articles detailing a condition called sudden unexpected nocturnal death syndrome, SUNS, which was killing young men. The victims were largely of Southeast Asian descent, many of them refugees from conflicts like the Vietnam War and the deadly reign of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. Of course, these men were not struck down by dream-dwelling monsters, but a legitimate medical condition. According to cardiology professor Matej Ovada, the deaths occur during sleep because the heart slows down, making any inherent issues more likely to occur. Unfortunately, very little is known about the condition, and testing for it is nearly impossible. The director of Jeepers Creepers is a convicted child molester. The 2001 film Jeepers Creepers was a tepid horror flick about an ancient monster that hunts for human body parts. It was nothing particularly groundbreaking, but the real monster of Jeepers Creepers was actually behind the camera. 13 years earlier, writer and director Victor Salva was helming an even more forgettable venture called Clown House when he took a shine to the movie's 12-year-old star, Nathan Forrest Winters. Salva filmed himself having oral sex with a boy, a crime for which he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was later released after 15 months. Winters has continued to prove a thorn in Salva's side, claiming that the director should not be allowed to live his life as if nothing happened. For his part, Salva has claimed to be repentant for his crime, stating, "I made a terrible mistake, one I wish I could take back every day of my life." The legacy of The Silence of the Lambs. The Silence of the Lambs was a cultural phenomenon, sweeping the Academy Awards and spawning a rash of sequels and parodies. The film's breakout star was Welsh actor Anthony Hopkins, who played imprisoned cannibal Hannibal Lecter. Hopkins' portrayal was so perfectly chilling that he won the Oscar for Best Actor despite a mere 16 minutes of screen time. In fact, he was so terrifying that he frightened away his girlfriend at the time, domestic maven Martha Stewart, who claimed that she loved him, but he was scary. Silence's other featured serial killer, Buffalo Bill, was almost completely overshadowed by Hannibal Lecter, but he has a bizarre legacy all his own. Bill's odd speech pattern was hijacked by actor Seth Green, who would use it to voice Chris Griffin on Family Guy, particularly a version of Bill speaking through a fast food drive-thru PA system. What happened to Danny from The Shining? The horror classic The Shining is a film fraught with gradually building tension. Much of this was inspired by director Stanley Kubrick, who drove the actors under his employ to the very edge of desperation with multiple takes. His wrath was especially focused on actress Shelley Duvall, who would later claim that the experience was almost unbearable. However, Kubrick was protective of the film's youngest star, 6-year-old Danny Lloyd, so much so that Danny didn't even know he was in a horror movie. In fact, Lloyd claims that he didn't even watch The Shining until he was 16 years old. After taking another small role in a TV movie 2 years later, Lloyd retired from acting altogether. This would lead to all kinds of rampant speculation, but the truth about the fate of Danny Lloyd is rather pedestrian. Today, the married father of 6 teaches biology at a community college in Kentucky and raises pigs. One of his fondest memories from the set was being able to ride his bike inside. Mr. Rogers and Zombies. Fred Rogers was probably as close to a saint as they come, a truly warm and endearing man who reached millions. But, strangely enough, part of his legacy would give rise to a horrifying new genre of shambling, flesh-eating zombies. One of the many people who started their careers working on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was a young filmmaker named George Romero. After working on a segment for the show where Mr. Rogers gets a tonsillectomy, Romero got the idea to create a zombie film. The result was 1968's Night of the Living Dead. Although Rogers supported Romero's efforts, he would not allow actress Betty Aberlin, who played Lady Aberlin on his show, to appear in the movie. Night of the Living Dead was a huge box office success, and it went on to inspire countless other such works, including AMC's ratings darling The Walking Dead. Sadly, when the film was released, the distributor neglected to put a copyright notice on the print. This meant that Night of the Living Dead was relegated to the public domain, where it could be sold or copied by anyone. As a result, Romero hardly saw a dime, and several different versions of the movie have emerged over the years. Nevertheless, Romero went on to have a long career directing horror films, including 1978's fan favorite Dawn of the Dead, which featured a group of survivors taking refuge in a shopping mall. Where is Damien from The Omen? Unlike Danny from The Shining, little Damien in The Omen is as evil as they come. The Antichrist himself. Finding a tot capable of giving off an intimidating ming is certainly no easy task, and director Richard Donner searched high and low. When he found 4-year-old Harvey Spencer Stevens, he knew he'd found his boy. In an interview with AMC, Donner admitted that, during Stevens' audition, he'd urged the child to attack him and Harvey responded vigorously, punching him in the testicles. During filming, Donner evoked Damien's angry reactions by bullying the boy, threatening him with lines like, "What are you looking at, you little bugger? I'll clobber you." Luckily, the curse that followed the cast and crew of The Omen seemed to turn a blind eye toward Harvey, despite the fact that he played the son of the devil himself. Like Danny Lloyd, Stevens only made one more small appearance as a child actor before essentially falling off the radar. Today, he works as a futures trader on the London stock market and makes the occasional appearance at horror conventions, his infamous tricycle in tow. The Stanley Hotel Pet Cemetery. All roads seem to lead us back to The Shining. Although it is now considered a cinematic masterpiece, at the time of its release it received generally negative reviews. Stephen King himself hated it with a passion which continues to this day. King got the idea for The Shining while staying at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, a sprawling, historic hotel in the Rockies with a reputation for being haunted. King stayed there the night before the hotel closed for the winter, and its vast, empty spaces left him with an unmistakable eerie feeling. Unlike many hotels which try to distance themselves from paranormal connotations, the Stanley embraces its history, offering all manner of ghost tours. It even has a television channel that plays The Shining on a continuous 24-hour loop. Another of King's most terrifying works was the novel Pet Sematary, which was adapted into a 1989 movie that managed to traumatize an entire generation. Scenes like this are enough to provide months of nightmare fuel. In a bizarre case of life imitating art, the Stanley actually had a real, creepy pet cemetery located on its grounds. It was recently dug up and moved so that a wedding pavilion could be built. Getting married over a former pet cemetery at a haunted hotel is either very bold or very morbid.